Hello, everyone. You know what that sound means. It's time to get today's webinar started. I'd like to thank everybody for jumping on the webinar today. We're glad to have you here. This week's webinar is going to be on how to green your commute, which is timely as we come up with National Bike to Work Day and Green Your Commute Day coming up next month. My name is Brendan Woodruff. I'm the co-chair of the Operations and Engagement Subcommittee here at the Executive Order 4 group. And we're happy to have you. I'm also going to be presenting today, so in addition to having the host and having to listen to me at the beginning, you're going to have to listen to me for the whole 30 minutes today. A couple housekeeping issues before we get started and dive into today's program. This webinar is being recorded. It will be put on the Green New York website so you can view it later, and you can share it with any colleagues who weren't able to make it today. Also, feel free to share that page with anybody you know that is interested in sustainability. We have all of our previous webinars saved there, so you can go back and watch those. In addition, if you do have questions today, please feel free to type them into the chat box. Today's presentation is going to be a little more free-flowing than the past ones. I'm going to be answering questions as they come in, so feel free to type them in whenever, and I will get to those as we go along instead of waiting until the end today. It's going to be a little more informal. Couple announcements. Earth Week is coming up. Earth Day itself is on April 22nd this year, and we have a twofer that week. We actually have Arbor Day on Friday, April 26th. So that's going to be a big week of environmental and sustainability initiatives, so be on the lookout for those. In addition, I know we've heard a lot of information about the recycling markets out there and kind of the issues that are going on there. The Department of Environmental Conservation's Recycling Outreach and Education Unit has recently launched a new initiative called Recycle Right and Why that has a number of great resources on their website that you can check out. So if you have questions about what to put in your bin, they have a number of graphics you can use. They're focusing on one recycling tip a month. This month is textiles and how to properly recycle those and to make sure you keep those out of your recycling bins. So you can Google Recycle Right and Why, and that information will come up. So if you're thinking about things to send out for Earth Day or send to colleagues or other things, Recycle Right NY has some great resources for you. In addition, if you do want to get more involved in sustainability initiatives, either at the interagency level or at your agency or entity, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be at the end of the webinar here. I'd be happy to put you in contact with folks that can get you more involved. We're always looking for more volunteers, and that's how we make the work happen. So let's get started today. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about the benefits of a green commute and how you can help when it comes to climate change and with air pollution in your community and what the impacts are, how to green your commute wherever you live. No matter where you are in New York State, there's a way to green your commute. I can guarantee that. And I'm also going to give you some information about Green Your Commute Day 2019, which, as I mentioned before, is coming up. It's going to be on Friday, May 17th this year. And from this graphic here, you can see we put this together last year. It's actually an animated GIF that's not working right now, but it shows you how many pounds of CO2 you can save with a single green commute. The stat that I like to pick out from that is that if you, let's say you carpooled once a week, you had a 30-mile round-trip commute, you would save the equivalent emissions of burning 700 pounds of coal. So that's 52 green commutes. Say you did it every Friday, you carpooled 30 miles round trip. Imagine how large a 700-pound lump of coal is, and that's what you're saving just from making a small adjustment once a week. And then when you add that up over, the hundreds of thousands of New York State employees there are, and then the millions of New Yorkers, you get a really large emissions impact. So why do you want to green your commute? Transportation has overtaken the electricity sector as the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. It's about 34% of our overall total. It's also the largest portion of most people's personal carbon footprints. So we're focusing on commuting today, but when you look at transportation as a whole, when it comes to traveling for vacation, whether it's flights or long road trips or things like that, that's where most of our carbon footprint comes from. If you're using an active commute, it also has health and well-being benefits. You're getting exercise, which is good. And I like to think of whether you I walk to work personally, or if you're biking, I like to think of this as mindfulness instead of stressfulness. Everybody's sat in traffic, knowing they have a meeting or a conference call coming up, and you've just been getting more and more mad at the wheel. There's nothing you can do about it. When you switch to a greener commute, if you're able to, whether it's walking or biking, a lot of times I find myself kind of thinking about my day, smelling the flowers, taking in what's happening in the community, learning about new things, and really more of a place of mindfulness than it is stressfulness. And the same thing goes for transit, too. If you're on the train or the bus and you're watching the scenery go by, it's a lot better than being in the driver's seat watching your face get redder as you're stuck in traffic. And as I mentioned before, the impact that you can have from doing this is huge, So there's the why. Now let's get into the how. And the one thing I really want to stress, if you take nothing else away from this webinar today, is that there's no one right answer, and it's not all or nothing. A lot of people think about this, and they think about the bike commuter who goes 20 miles, and they have their Lycra or spandex on, and they're hardcore about it. Not everybody's going to be that. For people who are, that's fantastic. If you're somebody who can carpool twice a week, that's amazing. You're making a difference, and as I mentioned before, you're making a large difference. So the big thing is to find what works for you. As I mentioned, not everybody's going to bike, not everybody's going to be able to take transit, not everybody's in a position to carpool or buy an electric vehicle, but there's always something you can do, and no matter the scale, whether it's every day or whether it's once or twice a week. And you've got to work within your existing infrastructure. Every part of New York State is different. If your work site is in Manhattan, then definitely it's going to be a lot easier for you to have a green commuting mode than it is if you're in Potsdam or Canton or Bath or someplace like that. But you got to work with what you've got. Consider multimodal options as well, and this gets back to the not all or nothing. You can bike to meet somebody down the street and carpool with them. You can take the bus. It may not drop you off right at your office, but it drops you off a half mile away. It's a nice day out. Take the bus and walk for the last half a mile if you're able to. You can bike to a bus line. You can drive your EV to commuter rail if you're in Westchester, and the MTA has charging stations at a lot of their park and rides. So the biggest thing I want people to take away from this today is, again, there's no one right answer, and just find what works for you. So let's go through the different modes here and provide some resources for you. Walking. We all know what walking is. We all do it every day. It's simple. It's free, which is really nice. When you're doing it, make sure you walk safely. Let's say you live a mile away and you're like, well, I could walk to work once a week or something like that. One of the things you can do is you can actually use mapping software. There's a lot of these out there now, whether it's Google Maps, Apple Maps. I don't know if MapQuest still exists. Things like that, where you can actually search for walking now, and it will recommend different routes. And in a lot of these, there will be options where you can actually look up, I want to stay off busy streets, or I want more sidewalks. And usually it'll warn you if it's trying to take you down a path that might be dangerous or might not have sidewalks on it. So use those. And again, think of walking also as an accoutrement to whether transit or carpooling. You can go in there and you can walk to a bus stop that's a little further away than you had thought because you might get a better route. Or you can walk to somebody's house in your neighborhood to carpool with them. Biking. Here we have a great picture of Commissioner Sagos from DEC biking into work for Green Your Commute Day a couple years ago. One of the great things about biking is that it's emissions-free, just like walking. It allows you to go further than walking. We're getting back to the basics here. And one of the big things we're seeing all across the state is that there's more bike lanes and infrastructure being installed every year. New York State, quite a while ago, passed a complete streets law that says that any kind of street construction has to look at incorporating alternative forms of transit, such as walking and biking. So we're seeing more of that coming up. And in cities, you're seeing a lot more of that happening as well. If you're here in Albany, you know we have the bike paths coming in from the north along the Hudson. We've got the new rail trail coming in from Altamont, Voorheesville, and Delmar. We've got a new connector that's going to link up downtown Albany to the Delmar rail trail. And you're seeing the same thing happen all throughout the state in all different communities. So if you haven't thought about biking in a while, give it a think. and look at what new infrastructure has come in, because I guarantee you in your community there's something new that's happened. Another thing that's happening with biking is bike share systems. Most upstate cities are installing them or have already, and they're expanding. In New York City, you might have heard of City Bike. It's a great way to get around. They're also in New York City adding electric assist city bikes, so it's even easier. You can get to work without sweating, which is definitely a plus if you don't have shower facilities or anything like that. So take a look in your community and think about bike share systems as well. And for biking, again, you can do what we talked about for walking with the mapping apps or the mapping software. They all have bike routes as well, and they usually try and put you on a safer route that has bike lanes in the infrastructure that exists. Also, DOT has a Bike NY map on their website, so if you Google that, you'll be able to get to their system that shows you where there's dedicated bike routes. Usually they have really wide shoulders or bike lanes. Transit, bus service exists in almost every part of the state. I've gone through and did an analysis of this recently to update our Green Your Commute Day website, and pretty much every county has some form of a bus system. They may not be the most convenient in all aspects. You know, we're not getting 5-minute service if you're out in Essex County or Clinton County, but there definitely are options wherever you are. So at the end, there'll be a link to the Green Your Commute Day webpage, and you'll be able to check a list of transit providers there. In addition, when it comes to resources for transit, as a New York State employee, there's a program called NYS Ride, and this allows you to purchase transit fares with pre-tax dollars. And the way this works is you go on, you have a portion of your paycheck withheld pre-tax. They'll give you a card that you can use to buy transit fare or other qualified commuting expenses. It used to include biking expenses. Unfortunately, with the tax overhaul last year, Congress took out the bike benefits, but you can still get the transit benefits. So if you're thinking about trying transit, you can take $50 out, get a monthly pass, try it for a month, see how it works. You can do that with pre-tax dollars. And if you're buying let's say you're in the New York City area, you're taking Metro North or the LIRR, you can save quite a bit of money with NYS Ride. And in addition, most mapping softwares now offer transit information as well. I'm going to keep going back to that because they're pretty much a one-stop shop for alternative commutes. So you can go on there. I know here in the Albany area, if you go to Google Maps, CDTA has real-time info on there, so you can have the GPS show where you are. You click the nearest bus stop, and it'll actually tell you when the next buses are coming in real time, which is really handy. In addition, most transit services also now have apps. Most of the large ones, you'll be able to download an app and see real-time info as well, so you can see when buses are coming. That's really handy in the wintertime, or if it's really hot out, because you'll know, oh, the bus is coming in 5 minutes. I can wait inside where it's heated or air-conditioned. Carpooling. So here's where we have some resources for you. The other forms of transit that we've mentioned before, or transportation, have focused on mainly more developed areas, even though there is some rural transit service out there. Carpooling can work anywhere in the state, and this is one that I really like to promote because of that option. It's great for rural areas, and one of the things that I like to tell people as well is that it doesn't have to be door-to-door. We have a lot of folks in the last couple of years for Green Your Commute Day have said, well, no one lives in my town. I live 30 miles from the office. If somebody lives 20 miles from the office on your commute, you can pick them up. Or you can meet somewhere, at a park and ride lot. DOT has a list of park and ride lots that you can find throughout the state. You guys can meet there and split the driving. So there's definitely ways to make it work. And again, carpooling can be flexible. It can be just a day or two a week. And as I mentioned before with the emissions reductions, you can offset a 700-pound lump of coal just by doing this 1 week if you have a 30-mile round-trip commute. And one of the biggest barriers that we hear when it comes to carpooling is finding someone to carpool with. Again, in some of the more rural areas, you have people living in multiple towns. They might have different schedules and things like that. We've put together a resource that's going to make it easier for you. So a number of agencies have joined our New York State 511 New York rideshare portal. You can see a screenshot of the main page here, and with this, you can use your New York State email address to create an account. And in there, you can choose to match, you can choose to get ride-sharing matches or carpooling matches with only state employees or state employees and the general public as well. So there's a general public version of 511 New York software as well that anybody in New York State can use to find a carpooling partner. The big thing with this New York State portal is that you can match just with other state employees. It increases security. If you only want to match with other state employees, you can do that. And it gives you some peace of mind that you're the only, it's just you and your coworkers that are in that portal. So if your agency has signed on, feel free to go on there and give it a shot. The more, even if you don't find somebody right away to match with, it's important to get into the system if you want to find matches, because the more people that are in there, the easier it's going to be for everybody to find somebody to carpool with. In addition, if your agency or entity has not joined it yet, you can use the public version of 511 New York Rideshare, and that's, we have the address, the URL right there. You can go to that and you can sign up for an account and you can match with folks in your community. In terms of privacy, they're very good about that. They don't give out names, they don't give out home addresses. They just mention the town that you're leaving from and the town where you're going to. Then you can communicate through the system just like Craigslist, so you're not exchanging private information at all. If you agree to carpool, you can meet at a park and ride lot or other public area to feel more comfortable with that as well. So there's a lot of built-in privacy there. In the tweet that we have up here is actually Alicia Barton. She's the president and CEO of NYSERDA, who carpooled last year for Your Commute Day. So driving an electric vehicle. This one's a little harder to get into if you haven't already, because we do make vehicle purchases on a longer time frame than we do our regular everyday commuting. But if you have to drive, an electric vehicle is a great way to lower your emissions. One of the reasons for this is that upstate New York has the cleanest power grid in the nation between our hydropower, our nuclear is carbon-free, and we also have a growing amount of wind and solar. If you drive a plug-in vehicle in upstate New York, it's the greenhouse gas emissions equivalent of driving a highly non-existent 160 mile per gallon car. So you're significantly lowering your carbon emissions. Even if you drive a Prius now and you're getting 50 miles per gallon, this is more than tripling the efficiency when it comes to emissions. And with Governor Cuomo's recently announced Green New Deal, all power in New York State is going to be emissions-free by 2040. That means that if you're driving an EV in 2040, there will be zero emissions coming out of that. And in addition, if you do purchase renewable energy for your home, whether it's through credits or through an ESCO or community solar, or if you've installed solar on your home, you're driving emissions-free from day one. And with electric vehicles, you can get up to $9,500 off the purchase price through federal and state incentives. That comes from a federal tax credit of up to $7,500. That's dependent on the battery size of the vehicle, and there's a complicated formula of how many vehicles a manufacturer has sold, but that full $7,500 credit is available for any company besides Tesla and GM because they've hit sales goals. And in New York State, NYSERDA is operating the Drive Clean rebate program that provides up to $2,000 for the purchase or at least 36-month lease of a plug-in vehicle. And to get the full $2,000, it has to have an all-electric range of over 120 miles, and there's lower incentive amounts for plug-in hybrids and others that have lower range than that. So one of the big questions we always get with electric vehicles is where are the charging stations? Here's a couple resources for you and some more information about that. Plugshare.com is a great resource for that. You can see a screenshot from it here of the Capital District. It features a map on it where you can click on it. Those green icons are what are called level 2 chargers. That's what you're going to see in most public areas. It'll add about 10 to 20 miles of range per hour. When you click on any of those dots, it's going to show you where the charger is, if there's any fee for using it, what network it's on in terms of payments. In those orange ones, the orange dots there are fast chargers. And the Level 2 charging network in New York is growing exponentially. It's got really good coverage. We're seeing it in more and more spots. Employers are adding stations. We're seeing them at destinations such as ski resorts and other places. But one of the big things is people are always wondering about fast chargers for highway corridors and being able to make those long trips. And there are many, many more coming this summer. NYPA recently launched a $250 million program called Evolve NY. And the first round of that is going to be installing fast chargers on I-90, 87, and a couple other corridors, in addition to some urban ones in larger cities. So that is going to build out our charging network. Whether you're going east, west, or north, south, you'll be able to make those trips through the Evolve New York program. And there's also Electrify America, which is installing a lot of chargers as well. This is an entity that was it's being funded by the settlement money from the VW Dieselgate scandal. And they're installing chargers across New York as well. Right now they have them in Fredonia, Buffalo, and they're installing them in Albany, Herkimer, Waterloo, and in the Rochester area, as well as on Long Island and in Westchester. So when you add those two up with what's existing now, you're going to have a lot more fast chargers, and it's going to be much easier to drive across New York on a purely battery electric vehicle. We do have a question here. What are the New York Rides URL? And I believe the second part of that would be for the 511 rideshare program. I can send around the New York Rides URL to everybody as well at the end of the webinar. So I'll get that out to everybody. So Green Your Commute Day 2019, it's coming up, as I mentioned before, on Friday, May 17th. This is an annual statewide event that's designed to encourage people to use a more sustainable mode of transportation to get to work. State employees are encouraged to register their green commutes. We have a SurveyMonkey registration form that folks fill out, committing to their commutes for the day. And then usually DEC puts out a press release announcing the result on the day of. And we can get into kind of the numbers here. And this really just gets back to what I was mentioning before of the massive impact that every single one of us can have. This is going to be the fourth year of us doing Green Your Commute Day at the interagency level. The first year in 2016, 700 employees offset 8.5 tons of carbon emissions in just that one day. And last year, 2,300 employees offset 22.1 tons of emissions on just that one day, just by greening their commutes. So when you start adding these all together, you're really adding up to large emissions reductions. In addition, we hold an agency competition. So agencies compete to see which can have the highest percentage of their employees green their commute. We've done this for the past couple years. We've actually made plaques starting last year for the agencies that win it. We have different size brackets. So we have fewer than 100 employees, 100 to 1,000 employees, more than 1,000 employees, and then we also have a competition for SUNY schools as well. So be on the lookout for information regarding registering for Green Your Commute Day. Your sustainability coordinator should be sending that out during Earth Week. That's the week of April 22nd through April 26th. And the other thing we ask people to do for Green Your Commute Day is post a selfie if you're on social media. We've gotten great responses the last couple years, and this really helps amplify the message of the day and show that anybody can do this. So in addition to you, whether it's the first time you're greening your commute or you do it every single day, you're going to be counted. You're not only doing your part, let's put that first, you're lowering emissions, which is what we're going for. You're also adding to our total for state agencies. And when you post a selfie or you send it out to your friend networks, you're showing them that they can do this as well, that somebody they know is able to do this, and it gets them thinking about it. And we have people I've never even heard of. We have commissioners doing this. We have all sorts of folks that are posting selfies. So think about that for this year as well. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have any, please type them into the chat box. We have a group picture here on this last slide from DEC Central Office last year, featuring, again, Commissioner Sagos, the leaders of our sustainability team, and others who are involved in this. And I'd like to give a shout-out to everybody for the last couple of years who's done a great job of organizing this at the various agencies. So questions, feel free to type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we can start answering those. And as of right now, I am not seeing any. We'll give that another minute here. And I just wanted to reiterate kind of the main point that I want to drive home with this webinar is there is no right answer to this. There's no one single way to do this that's correct. It's a combination of whatever works for you and your community, what infrastructure is available, and however often you can do it. We all have family commitments and other things, but if you can make this work even just once a week or a couple times a month, it's going to make a big difference. So any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. I'll be here for a minute. If not, thank you very much for jumping on the webinar today. We do have our next one that will be coming up in May. It is going to be on, let me bring it up here. It's going to be on Tuesday, May 14th at noon, and it's going to be on reducing home pesticide use. So what you can do in the lawn and around your garden to reduce the amount of pesticides you're using as we start to think about lawn care season. So any questions? All right, with that, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you very much, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you out there for Green Your Commute Day. Thanks a lot. Bye.